Hello everyone and welcome to Organic Matters, the podcast brought to you by the Irish Organic Association. We're outside again today, which is lovely. It's lovely to be an actual farm and not sitting down on Zoom or anything. And I'm here on the farm of Angus Woods. Angus, thank you very much for doing the podcast with us.
You're welcome.
Now give us the lay of the land, because I stepped out of the car and I said this must be one of the best views from any farm in Ireland. So where are we?
Yeah, so we're just outside Wicklow town, between Rathnew and Wicklow, and the views are fantastic, but anyone that lives in a house or a farm with a good view would realise if you've got a good view, there's a risk of a good wind. And we do suffer quite badly in the springtime here if we get a cold easterly wind coming in off the sea. You can think you have grass, and a week later the grass is gone. It just vanishes with the wind.
But you can see over at the Irish Sea, and you were telling me, can you see whales sometimes?
Yeah, we can see the tops of the Welsh mountains, and particularly on a clear day after it snows, you can see them very, very clearly. So yeah, and I suppose if you think about it, when you see it on a map, we're really not that far from Wales. I think it's around about 100 kilometres across the sea. There are a few mad people swim it every now and again or row across it, but it's not far, yeah.
And in terms of the farm then, how many acres are you farming and what are you farming here?
Yeah, so we're farming 495 acres here. Not all of it is in the organic scheme. I've kept 60 acres out, which is in conventional spring barley. My rationale behind that was I think I've enough to learn in my first year.
Because you are still in conversion.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I signed up on the 1st of January, and my thinking was I have cattle here, I have sheep here, and I had enough to learn in year one and year two by getting that part of my farm functioning properly in the way I want it, without embarking on a tillage enterprise on top of it. Now I do have grown organic wheat and organic oats this year for my own feed, but I just wasn't brave enough to embark on the whole lot, because there is quite a lot of thinking about it and changing, and we don't have the same safety nets as we would have had in a conventional system. So between trying to get the right stocking rate and just getting everything lined up, I'm glad I didn't put the whole outfit into it in the first year.
Because you don't want to stress yourself out and feel like you've made a mistake as well. It's better to learn and then maybe go a bit deeper as you do learn.
Yeah, and you do need to feel your way into it. And probably if I was talking to someone that was thinking about going into organic, I'd say the year before you go in is when you really should be starting to put the foundations in place. So this year I have sowed 32 acres of red clover. It's my first time to sow red clover, and as we speak there's a guy mowing down the field here for a second cut of clover. But ideally it would have been nice to have that in the ground last year, so that this year in kind of May time I was taking a cut instead. I was waiting until almost when did I cut it? I think it was kind of almost August when I cut my first crop. You
haven't been sitting back in your laurels though, because even in first year conversion, for a lot of people they're still kind of humming and hawing about what to do, but you got stuck in with the red clover. I mean, you have been quite brave in your decisions.
Well, yeah, I have been growing multi-species swarts for my grazing platform, and the farm here is quite hilly. The grazing platform is pretty hilly, and I have seen the multi-species is performing well during the drought, because we do get quite a bit of drought here. I know other parts of the country,
sunny southeast, but it's at the same time it's nearly playing against you sometimes, is it?
It is, and there are times during the summer where the farm could look like someone had sprayed it off a Roundup. It just goes brown and that's it. And so even currently at the moment I'm feeding bales of red clover out to cows and calves out in the fields at the moment, just trying to supplement them along. I don't mind it doing it so much when the ground is nice and firm and dry at the moment, but if the weather was to take a downward turn, I might be forced into an early housing period.
We'll probably come back to housing, back to cattle, but you are very well known in farming circles, and there can be a bit of, I guess, eyebrow raising sometimes when people go into organics, but you did it very publicly and you wrote an article about it in the Farming Independent as well. So what made you decide to switch to organics?
Well, I just view myself, I'm a regular farmer. That's what I do. I don't do anything else. And I am aware that people would be watching, and I do know some of my own friends are watching, and if it goes well for me, they are really seriously considering making the change. So I'm trying to do it as well as I can, which is no different than any other project I would embark on. And what made me change? There was a number. I mean, how long is a piece of string? There's a number of factors in it. It is clearly the policy change. The direction of travel is down a much more environmentally sustainable path. So you can continue to swim against the tide and find yourself left stranded, or you can. I like to be an early mover on things, and I figured, well, sure, I'm going to get in here now and I'm going to make the most of it rather than complaining and being against everything. So that was one aspect of it. There are a number of other aspects. Labour, because of my proximity to Dublin here, it's incredibly hard to get someone to help on the farm. They just have to hop in the car and up the road and they have a job there, no problem. And one of the downsides to the economy, the Irish economy is fantastic when you look around the world. One of the downsides to it is we just can't get anyone to help on the farm anymore. There's more lucrative places to go. So I need to reduce my labour requirement. There's only one of me, and there's only 24 hours in a day, so we need to work that out. So that was part of it. And the other part is just the sheer economics of it. Every year we pay a lot of money out for fertilizers and sprays and all sorts of products and whatever, and really all that matters to me is what's left in my bank account at the end of the year. And I just thought, having struggled through the economic crisis that was sparked by the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the way fertilizer went through the roof, and fuel and electricity and everything, at the end of the day, it's what's left in my bank account is what's useful to me and my family. And I just thought, something's got to change here. I can't keep paying everyone. And I did have a student came here to do a work placement, and we were chatting over a cup of coffee one day when things were quiet, and I asked him how many students in his class were going to actively farm, and he thought for ages, and then he says, only 2 of us. And so I asked him, did he think he could generate enough income on his farm to employ all those people to tell him how to do it and to sell him product? Yeah. And that's really, we're getting a little bit top heavy in terms of advice and sales and everything. Those of us left on the ground are working harder and harder to keep everyone going. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to have a rethink and a reset on what I'm doing. And the organics, in my mind, seems to fit that bill. It seems to give me that reset, and it gives me back more control over what I'm doing and where I'm spending my money.
Yeah. Well, that's a good place to go to maybe another side of your farm and have a chat about what's going on there and give people a bit of time to digest that thought process.
Perfect, yeah.
So Angus, we've moved into another shed here, so explain what we have in front of us here.
So this is a slatted unit. It's entirely slats with a central feed passage.
Very traditional, it'll be the same on a lot of farms.
Yes, standard enough. Now some farms would have a straw lie back. This shed doesn't have that facility. So as part of the organic scheme, I'm now going to replace the slats with solid slabs, and the cattle are going to be bedded on straw. Big move. It's raised quite a few eyebrows that I would be reverting back to straw, but there's a couple of reasons behind it. Obviously, it has to be done for the scheme, but either way, I have a tillage enterprise, so straw is not my limiting factor. The farm is quite hilly, and a lot of the fields aren't accessible with a slurry tanker. But with dung, a much more stable product, I can actually get around those fields and spread dung on it. So a lot of the nutrients that would have been almost confined to some of my lower fields through slurry usage, I can now get them up onto the higher fields.
Are you going to turn into one of those manure gurus there? Are you going to get one of those, you can get I was on an organic farm recently, and it was nearly like a giant mouthpiece that was attached to a tractor, and it churns up all the dung and turns it into kind of a black gold almost, so you get really high nutrients. Can you see yourself getting a bit obsessive about it?
Yeah, well, I'd never say no to anything. I mean, I think to be a good farmer, you've got to be evolving all the time. You can't, policies change, everything changes, and you've got to be open and willing to new ideas and new concepts. So
I guess my point is that nutrients, because when you rotivate things like dung, when you look at your slurry as well, slurry on every farm even has a different nutrient kind of makeup to it. So is that something that you're going to be kind of quite particular about, especially in regard to your tillage side of things as well, because you can't use chemical fertilizers anymore?
Absolutely, you'll have to be. I mean, every field on the place has been soil tested now within the last year. I would have done it anyway. I have spent over the last 20 years, I spent a lot of money on lime as well, trying to get the pH right. So the nutrient aspect of it will be vital. I'm looking forward to producing a lot of dung with having the suckler cows and the calves on. The sheep I tend to run on cover crops for as much of the winter as I can. I bring them in for housing and then back out straight away. But the nutrient management will be key, because you don't have the safety net of just tipping down the road to the co-op and picking up a couple of ton of fertilizer and leaving a few €1,000 behind on your way out the gate. You don't have that safety net. So yeah, that's part of getting the whole nutrient, but also getting the stocking rates and the stocking numbers correct, so that I'm not caught in a bind anywhere.
And do you have stores, or do you have any suckler cattle, or how do you manage the cow side of things? Yeah,
so what I have here is of suckler cows. We keep 65 suckler cows, and we lamb down. I'm going to bring my lambing number, my ewe numbers back a wee bit, so I'm looking at lambing down about 500 this year, back from closer to 600. But I have more grass in my system this year, because some of the land that would have been continuous tillage has been sowed down to red clover this year, to give the land a break, but also to give myself a larger grazing platform. Because everyone would say to me, how much are you going to have to reduce your stock by? Yeah. It's not my intention to drop my stock numbers significantly. I might need to tweak them as we go, but because I've have access to bring the tillage land back in, it's increased my platform size rather than reducing my stock numbers.
There is this obsession that, like, when you go into organic farming, that you're going to drop your production, and that's a bad thing. But I think every farmer is different in how they approach it.
Yeah, and I also think, again, the change in supports from a per head basis in the beef side of things, from a per head basis into a per hectare basis, should focus the profitability of the system on the whole rather than the numbers of stock you're keeping. Like, if you're better off with a few less financially, if you're better off with a few less, that's not a bad thing.
And you have to think of the labour in terms of that as well. It's not just how many cattle you're carrying, how many sheep you have. It's also the labour that goes into them and how it balances out at the end of the day. There are costs there that farmers never take into account usually, which is their labour and their time.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I was saying earlier, the labour is a big thing. And my own, I know myself, there's times of the year where I'm just run ragged. Yeah, I haven't time to do anything. And yeah, while you survive it, you couldn't say that you necessarily enjoy it. So managing myself, I'd like to get into my old age not burnt out, and it's a risk that a lot of farmers that are very driven, they can, like down in New Zealand, you see, if you see a 50-year-old dairy farmer, they're usually burnt out at that point.
Have two knee replacements or a hip replacement or something.
Yeah, and that's not really what I want. I'm very active in sport, and I'd like to be able to continue doing that into into my 70s, you know. So I want to manage myself into that. But labour is a big issue, and it is part of my thought process around changing.
People are going to be interested in some nuts and bolts elements of things. So in terms of the suckler cows, what kind of breeds do you have? Do you have a preference? As well in terms of the sheep breeds, and do you have any kind of preference?
Yeah, so I do have preferences. First of all, I'm a firm believer in science. We would have used it a lot in my sporting background, and science, you know, if you couldn't scientifically back it up, it wasn't going to happen. So I'm a firm believer in science within the breeding, and hence the indices, the ICBF indices are important to me. And I use them on a regular basis, both within my own herd and if I'm also buying in a bull. And I know not everyone would agree, but that's my personal preference. And we've seen it in calving ease, just one simple thing, like the whole, what used to be a nightmare calving season, that's done away with through indices and through proper breeding.
So do you have, you always go for easy calving cows and bulls, but what kind of breed? Is it Angus or is it?
So my breed of preference, and I'm very happy with them, is Aubrac. I made a change. I originally would have been Charolais and Limousin on my sucklers here, and when I was actively involved in agri-politics, I was finding myself up all night trying to calve cows. When you had the calf born, you were trying to suckle them, and you were spending hours in the shed trying to deal with calves that were too lazy and just didn't want to get up and go. And I tended to lamb at the same time, so I could have losses in my sheep shed while I was trying to get persuade a calf to suckle. So I did switch into the Angus, but I was uncomfortable with the carcass weights. They just weren't giving me the carcass weights that I was used to. I was using an under 16 month bull beef system, and the Angus carcasses just didn't do it for me. So I experimented with the Aubrac breed, and what I'm finding with the Aubrac in the under 16 month bull beef, I was finding the carcass weights on the Aubrac were 6 kilos lighter, but I had almost no calving difficulties. The calves were getting up and sucking themselves. In fact, you could comfortably go off and do something and let them at it, like. And
they're actually very nice looking cattle, that it has to be said, just on top of it. I know some other organic farmers who use them, and they're very happy with them too.
Yeah, docile, very docile. Great mothers, they milk well, and as I say, they do exactly what you want a cow to do. They deliver. A calf themselves, a calf gets up and sucks, and they can produce great weight gain. Plus, I find they're quite good at retaining body condition. They don't melt away on me. So that is what I'm using on the cattle side. On the sheep side, I've also made a significant change in the last couple of years. Again, if I put a bit of background, 2 years ago, it cost me €1,400 to get my sheep shorn. And I sold the wool for €298. That didn't include my own time, my own labour, my own diesel bringing the wool to the merchant, plus bringing the sheep in from fields, drafting off lambs for shearing, the whole lot. The economics of it just don't add up. So I have been, over the last kind of 4 years, I've been breeding in Easy Care into the system, which are a shedding breed. They're very good mothers. And again, they do what they say on the tin.
Nice.
They are Easy Care. I have students come and help me at lambing time, and some of them are returnees on a regular basis. I have one girl that's been here 8 years now, and you know, they are noticing the difference in terms of less work around lambing time. Now we do lamb indoors because that cold easterly wind.
You are more prone to snow in this part of the world as well. Or do you have the sea breeze keep it?
Yeah, we don't, because we're so close to the coast. Yeah. If we do get snow, it tends not to last. Okay. But it's the cold wind coming in off the sea is what does the damage. So to switch to Easy Care, they're not the prettiest sheep. The males are not the prettiest sheep. I think the females are lovely. They have a lovely feminine head and a lovely feminine structure to them. The males are not the prettiest, but then again, you know, when they go to the factory, the head, which is what turns most people off, is the first thing that's discarded, you know. And you're looking at the carcass weight. Can they produce the carcass weight? What's the conformation like? So the conformation I find on them is, it's not as good. Being straight, I wouldn't have as many E and U grades as I would previously with the likes of Suffolks. But I have more live lambs. The fertility is good and less labour, and I think at the bottom line, at the end of the day, is significantly better by using them. So if you're not concerned about having mainly or grade lambs, ors with some ewes, I think they're ideal. But if your only concern is having a kill sheet that says all E's and U's, they're not going to deliver that for you now.
And I guess in terms of the red clover silage, and I guess even yields this year, well, what other crops were you growing besides the red clover silage?
Yeah, so I put in 32 acres of red clover.
Yeah.
The first cut averaged 9 bales per acre.
Are you happy with that?
Yeah, no, I was pleasantly surprised with it. They're currently mowing it for the second cut. Now I don't expect if it does four bales the acre, but it's first season in. The grant is a big incentive as well, too, the €300 per hectare. That really takes the sting out of it. And bear in mind, that's all delivered on 3,000 gallons of slurry. And so far, because I am feeding it, they're loving it. They really are loving it. Other crops, I sowed wheat and I sowed spring oats. The winter wheat, it was winter wheat sowed last November. It would have struggled with the constant rain, so it didn't yield particularly well for me. It probably only did about 2 tons. The spring oats, I'm happy enough with the spring oats. It was 1.5 tons. It was sowed late. It was out into May when it was sowed, and I was happy enough as a first effort. What did surprise me was how little weeds was in it. My neighbour was in, and I had an awful job trying to convince him I hadn't sprayed it. You know, he just would not believe me. You know, but I hadn't sprayed it, and I'm pleasantly happy. It's tipped in the shed, and it's there for my own use now.
We're coming to the end of the podcast, but I'm wondering, what are you most looking forward to in the years ahead?
Yeah, I suppose I'm looking forward to learning more. I'm looking forward to bedding down my new system, getting it up and running. I'm hoping to have a little bit more free time. And that free time allows you to think more about what you're doing, that you're not just running around doing work. And I'm hoping that free time will allow me to relax and actually think about the direction that I want to evolve the farm into. I don't know, there's a lot of negativity around farming at the moment, really a lot, and I don't see it that way. I everywhere I look, I see tremendous opportunities for young farmers. I'd love to be a young farmer coming out of Ag College at the moment. I honestly believe there's really, really good opportunities there. The limiting factor will be availability of labour and finance for financing a labour efficient system. But I think for a young person coming out of college that's business minded and driven and sees farming as a business as opposed to something you just do, I think there's brilliant opportunities there, and I'm quite excited about it myself. You know, I've a long way to go in my farming career at the moment, and I'm looking forward to it.
Brilliant. Well, hopefully I might be back in a few more years when you're fully converted, and we'll see what you're up to then. But Angus Woods, thank you very much. Perfect. For everyone who's been listening, you've been listening to Organic Matters, the podcast brought to you by the Irish Organic Association. And for more on organics, you can go to their website, www.irishorganicassociation.ie. But for me, Hannah Quinn Mulligan, thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back again in 2 weeks' time.